What's up, nerds? Good. Thanks for showing up, hanging out. What a horrible act to follow. I don't know if anybody saw John's like firestorm of like refi Jesus. I'm so amped up off of it right now. Let's see if we can do something. Something relatively cool or not. It's also good to crash in front of folks. Working out loud. Blah blah blah. So we're going to talk about liberating structures. We're going to actually jam with some liberating structures. We're going to play around with these three guys, some of my favorites: 1, 2, 4, all, the agreement certainty matrix, what, so what, now what, and a teeny tiny taste of panarchy, holonic goodness. First, a little bit about me. I'm a person. My name is Jeremy. My day job is an agilist. I'm a longtime lurker in the sort of game B scene. And I'm a serial space convener and a facilitation nerd. I hang out with those dorks at Regens Unite, and those are my people. The first question I'm going to throw at the group is one around where do we find ourselves? Let's get a little bit of a bead on the type of world that we are dealing with and we're hoping to address. So, whatever our context is here in Rebuild, whatever it is, I don't know, what is the shared context? Are we building a new world together? Are we building a village together? Are we building random crap? Whatever that is, how would we describe it? Are we in a situation, challenge, or context that is either one on the left-hand side, super predictable, you know how it's going to go before it even goes down, or extraordinarily unpredictable on the right, where, it's just chaos. So in your own appraisal, please cogitate and think about where you think we're all. I'm going to put a minute on the clock and shut the fuck up, and you can contemplate. Yeah, I was not serious. I was really serious about that. Absolutely. 1 minute of just good old fashioned silent thinking time. Gather your own thoughts. So if you could do me a solid, use the chat on a scale of 1 being very predictable and 10 being very unpredictable. Where do you think we are, and whatever our shared world building context is. Whole integers. God damn it, Alan. There's always one. Fuck me. Awesome. Interesting. Cool. That'll do. The point is, everybody has some time to gather their own thoughts and come to their own conclusions. And now the next step in the game is to cross-pollinate and mix those thoughts together and see how we see what we can learn from one another. So the time box on this is going to be super tight. Deal with it. You're just going to have a couple minutes to give ourselves a flavor of how it goes down and what the vibe is sort of like. Try to share time as much as you can, blah, blah, blah. But cross-pollinate. Maybe we can do something else as well. Maybe you can build in some additional parameters about how to cross-pollinate. If you can, try and work up this ladder of inference. So you've all come to some conclusion about what you think the situation is like. So offer some data, some factual observations that leads you to that conclusion. And then build on that data with some form of inference, some so what on top of that what. The conclusions that you draw from that data. And maybe if you get there, think about what and now what type of action you might undertake based on your own analysis. Does anybody have questions about that game? Awesome, you'll figure it out. You're all smart people. Go play. All right, so we get to work out loud or not. Also good. What's up, Robert? What would, give me some information, man.
Yeah.
What was in your brain?
Yeah, for me, what came up, I was just in the room alone, so I thought I'd come back. But yeah, the situation that we're in, you know, evolving our consciousness, and that's a process happening. The question is, where are we with our consciousness, and where can we shift to? If you base it on data, because I'm not sure if I can go through your letter, but let's just say that the facts are that the current systems that we have are degenerative. And I think basically we're flowing to this other buzzword situation, degenerative, or something else you want to call it in your realm. But anyhow, that's a shift in consciousness, probably, that at some point we better make the shift together. And I'm not sure which conclusions I can draw from these assumptions, but that's basically my intuitive input.
Cool. And where did that put you from the initial question in terms of, you know, are we predictable, unpredictable territory?
Yeah, I put down also intuitively a 6. I was thinking something between a 5 and a 7, because I think, you know, if we take a look at our consciousness, also our behavioral patterns, some things are very predictable. We are quite predictable in how we sort of can take steps in a negative, but also in a positive way. So
it looks like we just crossed the hard stop threshold. So yeah. I'll have to put you on pause, Robert.
Okay.
So that was 2. Some one-on-one, some quality time to jam with some other nerds. Now we're going to do the next upgrade in complexity. We're just going to switch on over to 2 or to 4. So we're going to double date with another pair. And the magic of this is, rather than regurgitate your own thoughts that you just told that first nerd to these other nerds, paraphrase your partner. So as best you can, offer them the sensation of being heard and seen, and, you know, run the checksum, see if there's anything you missed that was essential to their story. And then your pair will do the same, and we'll come back in and rock and roll. Or not. You'll figure it out. No. Well, that's how it goes. Well, Alan. Well, Robert. Well, then, oh, no, well, there we go. They're in there. Cool. They got it sorted out. They're among friends. What's up, man? Zandrit?
Hello, hi.
Go, man. We're just having folks spit some raps. We're setting our context with a bit of an interaction game called 1, 2, 4 all. And everybody's just talking more or less about this question. You know, given the context of rebuild, what type of situation, challenge, or context are we in? Are we super predictable, or are we super unpredictable? Do you have a sense for where we find ourselves?
I'll say for most people we are kind of predictable.
Oh yeah? If you had to put this, if this was a line graph with, you know, as it is a line graph with, you know, 1 being predictable and 10 being unpredictable, could you put a number to it so I know exactly where you mean?
Just a second. Okay, if I have to put a number, maybe okay, that's a bit difficult. It's gonna be more than 5, otherwise it won't be towards the predictable side. Maybe 7.
7? 7's a solid answer. What do you see here and notice that lets you know that it's a 7?
Uh, to be honest, I am a bit late in the chat, so I'll need a little more context for that to be able to give you a proper answer.
No worries. I mean, there's only wrong answers, so don't worry about it. It's a trick question. No, I mean, so I think you're probably rightish. It's funny, when I was thinking about this, there's a possibility that the unpredictability is actually much higher than I think it is, even in this context. So unpredictability could just be like super rampant, actually, because I find myself so often surprised. So I usually think that unpredictability is like, oh, unpredictability is like a 7, it's like 6-ish. It's usually pretty unpredictable, but still pretty predictable at the same time. And in this instance, I really just go, I don't know, we could be really like at a 10, like things could go any which way. And what I see here and notice that brings me to that conclusion, like I said, I find myself so often surprised. And I think that like there's just so much volatility in the world that I feel like things could go any number of different directions that, even as optimistic and as pessimistic as I can be, both would still surprise me. So what's up, Rob? Long time no see, man. So that's sort of my 2 cents. I think we're probably even more unpredictable than I would have imagined beforehand. So now that we've got some information in the room, oh, let me actually wait. Not working ahead of the group. Welcome back, nerds. So now that we've had some opportunity to sort of cogitate together, does anybody from the group of Robert and Alan want to put down sort of where you guys landed on from, where we're at in terms of unpredictability?
Yeah, I think I can start. Do I have a minute, Jeremy?
Yeah,
or, yeah.
1 minute. I'll be gracious.
Okay, because I also want to give Alan a voice if he wants to, because there was a lot of
Then you got to
similarity.
share.
Okay, let me start. I think we both scored like 6 on this this roadmap that you have, and it's really amazing because he mentioned that he tries not to attach himself to situations and persons and ideas, and I feel exactly the same. So that's very interesting. I also feel that possibly these attachments that people have, that these dogmatic patterns can be sort of, the trigger for that's holding us back for our consciousness evolving. Alan?
Yeah, thanks. That was really good. Basically, I just don't try to look at the surface level of things. I try to go deeper and try to find the source of where it came from and why I was attaching myself to an idea in the first place, because it might have been indoctrination or cultural influences in other places. And so one of my core philosophies, I guess, is trust but verify, which is Russian military terminology, but it just means that you can say, yes, I believe you, but I'm also going to double check just in case.
Yeah, well, it's one way to deal with that unpredictability, right? Thank you very much. And so in the other group, Richard, Ricard, Richard, Michal, and who else was in that group? Who wants to share the information?
I can go. Rich brought the perspective I really enjoyed of just kind of being half in the middle, seeing both the predictable and unpredictable and the kind of meeting it halfway. I was more on the unpredictable side of things, so like closer to the 10, like I put myself on the 8. And Ale people dubbed himself as the king of unpredictability, so I would assume this is quite a higher rating. Yeah. Rich, Ale, something to add?
Just to defend my low
All good.
rating is the I think positioning ourselves as high unpredictability is the kind of hubris that nerds like us tend to suffer from, that we think that
Mm.
the future is this unknown quality and we forget about all of the past that is actually repeating the same stories over and over
It's
and over and over again.
from my point of view, it wasn't in that sense. There is no that my unpredictability wasn't in a bad way or in a good way. It's just
Word.
unpredictable.
Well,
It's-
that's
it's
time.
more-
So time constraints is also one way to end an argument. But there's a lot of difference in the room, right? So we've got high side, low side, but it sounds like more or less we are in the 2/3-ish place. And so that puts us, you know, here in this scale in the complex domain, right? So I'm going to be super presumptive and I'm not going to explain any of this shit. I'm going to presume that most everybody's familiar with either the Cynefin sense making framework and stuff like that. But it's important to say, thank you so much for dropping us links. That complex has a particular algorithm to search through. We want to probe, sense, and respond if this is the context that we find ourselves in. And that is sometimes really tricky, especially in the face of where we find ourselves, like confronted with a change that is really saying, all right, we need as big and as fast of a change as possible. We got, you know, kids burning out and throwing soup at paintings because of climate anxiety and, you know, just getting burnt out by bullshit, more or less. So that the pressure of the current moment sort of looms very large and feels very intense. And yet, what I hope to offer you in Liberating Structures is a way to think as slow and as small as you possibly can as the sort of best case scenario for the search algorithm through this sort of complexity and uncertainty that we find ourselves in. There's a sort of conversation that's happened in the sort of game B scene around, you know, where does change sort of need to take place? Are we talking about personal transformation? Is that the work? Or are we talking about big shit, big ass systemic change, right? You know, is it all about the trauma and the somatics? You know, or is it about the large scale macro governance-y systems, blah, blah, blah. And, you know, there's upsides for both and downsides for both. Strong arguments to be made. You know, the large scale has huge, incredible framing effects, but it's a blunt form tool. I mean, if we're going to invoke the Web3 context, token engineering is a very, very blunt tool that, that does so much, that has so many second order consequences that we're not quite sure of before we get started. And of course, it's really hard to move. In the personal space, transformation space, there's always this sort of the question of like, how do we translate that shit into something that actually like scales, right? I hate the word scales, but that's still a question that is like, how do we turn my personal transformation into something that we're all doing together? And that's where I think Liberating Structures come in and say, they're both the wrong fucking question. You know, personal transformation is great. Organizational transformation is awesome, but it's too hard. Think about the middle scale, the scale of, you know, your fucking crew. You and the plus or minus team that you have around you actually has a lot of autonomy and a lot of agency to switch things up. And on top of that, has an incredible opportunity because they touch both the small scale and the large scale. And the way that works is, especially if you're familiar with authentic relating and those types of games, then, you know, for sure, you can you might notice like a little bit of a disappointment with liberating structures because they will offer such strong area of effect upgrade to other people's communication. And that's great. Like bringing unskilled communicators up to skilled communicator level is phenomenal. And on the flip side, liberating structures as psychotechnologies tools, I know I haven't talked about them at all, fucking deal with it, offer a modularity that enables you to swell up to large scale contexts. And if you want to dig into more, check out the work of Barry Oshry and this lady, Yvonne Agazarian from System Center Training. But yeah, the essence of the problem is really one that is social and cultural. We are entrained in really shitty behavioral patterns that make very bad use of very expensive hardware, being neurology. Brains are expensive, like the 20% of your body mass, no, the 2% of your body mass uses 20% of the energy, some shit like that. Brains are just fucking crazy expensive, evolutionarily speaking. So we want to use them very wisely. And avoid the big challenge, which is fucking bandwidth, right? Right now we have a bandwidth in this room that I'm making poorer use of right now than I was 10 minutes ago when you guys were talking to each other. I'm getting very low throughput on this monologish shit. And that's because we're in this pattern that we sort of default into. This is the big cultural evil of our time. That is, one person talks and everybody else is sort of stuck listening. And in group contexts, this is just a nightmare. It's like 20 to 50% like effective in the best case of scenarios.
We have 2 more minutes just to give a.
Oh, awesome. But liberating structures can help you avoid all of these other ways of wasting people's time, attention, and energy, and lean into this guy right here, how to include and unleash everyone. So, bam, that's there we go. That's good enough. If you have any questions, you can find me on the internet. That's it. Go hang out with me, Michal and Rich. They're gonna carry on this narrative arc in interesting and unexpected ways, I'm sure.